Hey, it's Martavis Bryant, a.k.a. Martin McBride.
Hey, this is Fred Jackson.
This is Hall of Famer Marshall Faulk.
Hey, this is Allen Robinson.
Hey, this is Amir Abdullah.
Hey, this is Willie Sneed.
Hey, this is David Johnson.
Hey, yeah, this is Christian Michael.
Hi, this is Eric Dickerson, NFL Hall of Famer, and you're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the Playdraft Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in. The show's about to begin.
So much fantasy football going on this week, and I can't even contain myself.
Your grammar levels are going to be...
They're going to be low.
Troublesome.
All my energy will be focused on football, speaking, words, grammar, out the window.
No, you've got to get your emotions out, and it doesn't matter what order the words come in.
Darn right.
Before we start this show, I have to do one thing.
Oh, great.
I have to flick that bug at Jason.
Oh, no!
Another bug? Back-to-back bugs in the office? Brooks, you know your number one job here, right? It's not
save us from bugs.
It's not to produce this show. It's not to judge our arguments. It's to get rid of the bugs.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's going to have to become more of a
exterminator job.
Full-time position for you. Welcome into the show. This is the Fantasy MVP episode. Mike is clapping.
You've been waiting?
I love this show, man.
This is a great show.
It's just this awesome, we bring everyone together. If you're not familiar with what the show is, we reach out to other fantasy football analysts that we really respect. We say, hey, shoot us a 60-second blurb of your fantasy MVP. That's however you want to take it. Overall number one player, best value. You see a big breakout coming for this player, and it's just really cool, I think, once everything is in here, to get all these different personalities, because we all view the game slightly different. So it's just it's really fun for me to see this every single year.
Great episode, and really the truth is, at the end of the year, we're going to sit here and we're going to say player A, player B, player C, they won fantasy titles. Certain players. So now we're trying to predict those and get them out there right now. We have our fantasy MVPs that we're going to share. Now, are we doing those at the end?
Yeah.
So we're doing those after everybody
else?
Okay. Cool. We have a quick question, guys. I love this one. Brooks, good job. Not on the bugs, but on the quick question.
Thanks.
Who's a player that fantasy owners will want to drop after a poor week one performance, but shouldn't? So somebody that may struggle week one, and people will be tempted to let go, but maybe they should hang on for another week at least.
I'll hop in with someone that they're not going to drop, but they'll be so disappointed they might be looking to trade him, and that is Mr. Number One running back Leonard Fournette himself. Ooh. Last year, Ezekiel Elliott, the clear number one pick, he came out of the gate with 20 carries. And those
20 what?
20 carries, and those carries went for a grand total of 51 yards. Everyone was disappointed. They're thinking, "Oh, what a letdown." Well,
I spent a first-round pick on this guy.
Exactly. And I got bad news for Leonard. Leonard Fournette starts the year with the Texans. He's coming.
They call him Lenny.
They do, the Lenny. Lenny's starting with the Texans. He's coming off of the current, mysterious foot problem. So I think his carries might be a little limited. His, what he's going to see across the way there in the Texans is not going to be nice for him, and I think he's going to have a bad week one. However, right after that, soon as he's done with the Texans, he goes to the Titans, Ravens, Jets. So he might be a week one trade target.
Interesting.
So if someone just fully tilts, you mean?
Yeah, if someone, you've got the guys in your
People
league.
do it.
We have had a guy in our league forever where if a guy blows up on your roster, you gotta shop him to this dude because he's gonna blow up forever. Or the vice versa. If there's a guy who just had a really horrendous week, that guy's done. I mean, his career's over. Go get him.
All right, I'll go with Kenny Golladay. A lot of smooth route talk.
Oh, so smooth.
But, look, I don't think he's going to have any success week one. His first professional football game against the Arizona secondary. I think he's a player that is being drafted towards the end of draft, so he will be a natural candidate for being cut in week 1, and I think it's probably worthwhile for fantasy owners to give him more than a 1-week look, but I don't think week 1 is going to be good. So I think Kenny Golladay is a candidate for that week 1 drop.
And mine's a similar pick to that, but this guy actually had over 1,000 yards.
He was a top 15 wide receiver.
Tyrell Williams, Los Angeles Charger, week 1. He takes on Denver. Last year, in 2 games against Denver, this top fantasy wide receiver totaled 32 receiving yards combined for both games. So don't expect a huge game. And Williams is a late pick, so you might say, bah, I'm going to ship him off. But just give him some time. Understand that almost everyone craps the bed when they're playing against the Denver Broncos. So Tyrell Williams is my pick of a player that you may want to drop, but you shouldn't.
Week 1 is funny because we all know that players, they go up and down. It doesn't matter who you are, right? Like Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, they're all going to have down weeks. But week 1 weighs so heavily on the minds of fantasy owners because maybe it's just that down week for that player, but because you're coming out of the gate and because of the waiver wire and players that will inevitably blow up in week 1, you're going to see a lot of players. I guess that's a good public service announcement for fantasy owners. Look to the waiver wire, not just for the players that blew up in week 1, but more so for who people drop in week 1.
Absolutely. That was one of our, top 10 tips and tricks.
Drop it like it's hot.
Drop it like it's hot. But week 1 is one of the best times to do that. I mean, look at last year, the way that Marvin Jones came out of the gate, and people were like, oh, well, Golden Tate's worthless.
Sure.
You could have picked him up.
All right, follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. The website's thefantasyfootballers.com. The fantasy community is over at jointhefoot.com. And a quick reminder, if you're in Phoenix and you want to see us live, we are holding a live show.
Well, you're darn
at the
right
Crescent
we
Ballroom
are.
On Monday, ballerslive.com for details.
Be there. It's going to be incredible. We're all going to be there. The judge.
I hope we're going to be there for a live show.
Well,
Mike,
you need to remind me. You got to build the excitement,
Gonna
man.
have some giveaways, some
There's
contests,
a chance we'll show up
some trivia
at the live show,
some photos. It's going to be a good event.
Yeah,
you got to leave some mystery.
Ballerslive.com.
you don't leave mystery as to whether the main guests show up.
We might or might
Jerry
not be there.
Seinfeld's hosting a comedy event. He may or may not be there. Yes, we're Jerry Seinfeld. Let's move on.
News and notes from around the league.
I'm not sure Brooks will be there if this bug problem doesn't get under control.
Uh-oh.
Brooks?
Oh, wait. Do you want me to go take care of it now?
No. You should probably sit there for another 40 minutes or so.
Oh, okay.
All right, the NFL Players Association has filed a temporary restraining order in Texas calling for the courts to block any suspension for Ezekiel Elliott upheld by the arbitrator Harold Henderson. Henderson is yet to report on the suspension. This is from Adam Schefter of ESPN. The NFLPA is filing calls for the court to vacate the entire suspension for Ezekiel Elliott, and this could speak to why Jerry Jones had a lot of confidence that a suspension wasn't going to happen. What in the world do we do now? Every day is a new adventure. Every day is a new draft for fantasy owners. You could go from a 3rd or 4th round Ezekiel Elliott to, if he plays the whole year, all of a sudden he's the same player and he belongs at number 3. So
this is going to approach Deflategate levels of absolute ridiculousness. And I mean, completely different issues. Obviously, I'm not comparing what Zeke is going through to a deflating of a football, but I don't know
from a dysfunctional NFL standpoint.
Like these. How are we getting to these points now where the NFL is handing out these suspension and then news leaks out? Oh well, the person who was actually in charge of the investigation said, well, we shouldn't suspend him at all. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, for drafting this weekend. A lot of people have their draft tonight, tomorrow, the next day.
Where are you taking him?
I'm taking Zeke probably at the back of the first.
Let's just juggle the knives. Let's just take him early because the odds of a reduced suspension or a vacated suspension or him just playing early and maybe he still suspended, but it doesn't happen until next year because the legal process takes so long. You talk about fantasy MVP candidates. If you get Ezekiel Elliott and you're pairing him with one of those earlier running backs because you got him in the second or third round, man, that could be nice. By the way, Teddy Bridgewater put on the 6-game PUP, so not the season long.
Oh.
They're not ruling out a return this year. Good for you, Teddy. That was such an unfortunate thing that happened. So PUP 6 games. Jim Irsay said that Andrew Luck isn't likely to play in Week 1 against the Rams, but he has not been ruled out.
Does this remind you at all of when Peyton Manning was said to be just fine?
Oh, don't do that.
No, honestly, no, it doesn't.
No.
Okay, all right.
It doesn't. A partially torn labrum does not a neck injury make. I mean, it's not the same situation at all.
Sure. But same team. Same owner.
Same team.
I'm just saying the way you disseminate information.
Yes.
Well, sure. Oh, in ambiguity, yeah, there's a chance that Andrew Luck misses 3 games, 4 games. We don't know. I don't think it's going to be great if his first game back is Arizona in Week 2 in Arizona. So, look, at this point in time, you sit and wait, and you probably get great value in Andrew Luck. I mean, he's the most consistent fantasy quarterback over the last 3 years. So
I will say I have certainly been buying him up in best ball leagues. He's fallen into that 7th, 8th, 9th round. And at that point, the guys that you're giving up to get great value at the quarterback position are worth it. So hopefully he is back by Week 3.
DeAndre Hopkins got paid. Woo! Got that money. $81 million extension, $49 million guaranteed because he's great. That's the most guaranteed money for a wide receiver in the NFL.
And please, everyone listening, the way that we talk about DeAndre Hopkins as a fantasy wide receiver, do not let that information of us being down on him make you ever think that we doubt the talent level that DeAndre Hopkins has. He is a high-level NFL wide receiver 1. The problem is simply opportunity, getting him the ball, how many targets can he actually get from Tom Savage or Deshaun Watson. So good for you, Hopkins. I hope you have a nice, quiet celebration.
You know who always got paid? Larry Fitzgerald.
Yep.
You know who had seasons of 71 receptions for 798 yards and 4 touchdowns, 82 for 954, 63 for 784?
Larry Fitzgerald.
Larry Fitzgerald, obviously. I mean, look, if you put John Skelton in the backfield in Arizona, it doesn't matter how great you are. Everyone knows Larry Fitzgerald's a Hall of Famer. Everybody believes that the talent of DeAndre Hopkins is at that level if he has a long and storied career with that talent. It's just he needs to get matched up with the right quarterback. So just to reemphasize what Mike's saying, great player. I still think he's one of those, much like Gurley, he's still a candidate to be a surprise superstar for your fantasy team. He's a year removed from 111 receptions, so it's still a chance. But look, John Ross left Thursday's game with a knee injury.
Uh-oh.
That's not what you wanted to happen in the final preseason game. We don't know any more details. I've been searching around all morning. I think an MRI is going to happen, but I don't know what else is going on with John Ross.
On that news, I think Brandon LaFell is being overlooked again for year number 2. He was surprisingly good last year, at least surprising to many. And if you haven't heard us say it recently, we've talked a lot about the fact that last year Amari Cooper had 4 pass interference calls in the end zone, and how different would his fantasy season have looked if he wasn't, interfered with and he had the opportunity to catch those balls. Well, that was tied with Brandon LaFell, and Brandon LaFell had a decent – so, I mean, I'm just saying, especially in best ball leagues. I mean, the guy's going virtually undrafted, or if you're in a really deep league, he is worth a pickup, I believe.
Would you rather roster Kenny Golladay or Brandon LaFell?
Brandon LaFell, for sure.
Tyrell Williams or Brandon LaFell?
Tyrell Williams.
Okay.
Do we have an update on Josh McCown? The
update on Josh McCown is, once again, teams seem destined to try to hurt him on the field. For some reason, you play your starter in the 4th preseason game, and he got lit up. But the update that I had, I don't see anything severe that has gone on with Josh McCown, but he limped off the field like he's required to by contract.
So we would expect that Josh McCown, as of right now, we expect him to play Week 1?
Yeah, with eyes on Bryce Petty in deep leagues, 2 quarterback leagues, best ball leagues. Bryce Petty's probably going to get a start or 2 this year. Josh McCown just can't stay healthy in the NFL, and you're not going to stay healthy if you're in a situation where your team is always in a deficit, and then you're having to throw the ball, stay in the pocket, and people are pinning their ears back and going after you.
Why the charade that the Jets have done this entire offseason with the quarterbacks of trying to force Christian Hackenberg as their starter, and then All right, Josh McCown's the starter. But you're playing preseason week 4.
Yeah, it's all. I think it all goes the same thing.
I don't think the word why is worthwhile anymore with the New York Football Jets.
If you look at the goal and you think the goal is that number 1 pick, then the why makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right, Corey Davis should be ready for week 1, according to Titans coach Mike Mularkey. And Curtis Samuel left the preseason finale. Curtis Samuel, wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers.
It was good to see you.
Ankle injury, did not return in that game. I think we're ready to move on. Let's get into the fantasy MVPs.
Let's go.
Who's your fantasy MVP?
All right, we're kicking it off. Mike, you want to introduce our first fantasy MVP candidate? Or, I'm sorry, expert. Expert.
Sure. So, like I said, we called in some favors.
The big guns.
Call it from some fantasy football analysts that we really respect. First on this list, Mr. Brad Evans on Twitter at Yahoo Noise. If you play the game of fantasy football, you've heard him, Brad. You know Brad Evans has a very particular swagger and style. So let's check in. Brad, who do you got for your fantasy MVP?
Hola, amigos. Brad Evans here from Yahoo Sports. And if you like beer, cheese curds, and fantasy titles, Ty Montgomery must be on your team. He is going to be the breakout sensation of this year's fantasy season. A player last year who averaged 6.7 yards per touch and was top 3 in several secondary analytics, including yards after contact per touch, juke rate, and breakaway run percentage. Oh, and he happens to play alongside some little-known quarterback named Aaron Rodgers. In this post-Olivia Munn era, he could go for 1,300 combined yards and 9 to 11 touchdowns. Remember, he saw a light front 89.6% of the time in 2016. And who cares about Tyrell Williams, who's just sloughing it? Ty Montgomery will be a borderline top 5 running back this season. Bank on it.
Oh, Brad Evans. Look,
Brad's going to the bank.
He is loud, he is proud, and I nearly always agree with Brad Evans. I mean, you heard me on the show last week. My takeaway from that game was Ty Montgomery's the guy. I love him. He's a candidate for my fantasy MVP, and for all the reasons that Brad illustrated. He's on an incredible offense. He does not face a defensive front that a lot of these other frontline running backs face. And look, this is his first year preparing to be a running back.
Before we jump into, Jason, before we give our analysis on Ty Montgomery, I think we have to let JJ Zachariason also jump in here, because for the first time ever on the Fantasy MVP show, we may have some agreement.
Whoa.
First off, what's up, guys? I love you. I hope all is well. When you're talking about fantasy football MVPs, you're looking at upside. And if you're looking at upside, you're going to want to associate those players in good offenses. That offense in Green Bay is pretty good, and so is their running back. In games where Ty Montgomery saw 40% or more of the Packers' snaps last year, he averaged top 10 running back numbers at the position. He did that after converting to the running back position mid-season as well. He didn't even start the year as a running back. This year, the Packers have more competition in the backfield, but I'm a firm believer that the draft picks that they spent on running backs had more to do with the depth chart that didn't exist prior to the draft than it did them not liking Ty Montgomery himself. He doesn't need a ton of volume to be viable in PPR formats, but if he does see significant volume in goal line touches, then we could easily be talking about a fringe top 5 running back in fantasy football this season. In that dead 3rd and 4th round of fantasy drafts, Ty Montgomery is literally the perfect option.
Both of them. So both Brad Evans and JJ are throwing top 5 out, and you know what? I do not blame them. When we came in the offseason and we're starting to look at all the data fresh, Ty Montgomery, when I put my projections in for running back, I was like, holy crap.
He was way too high for you from just what you expected.
Yeah,
I remember
exactly. That. And I had him, I think, around 9 or 10. And I was like, oh, that feels real hot takey. But, I mean, my projections were my projections. And I've held on to that. I think Ty Montgomery is going to be a great pick for fantasy football this year. And right now he's sitting around that 14 range for me. I think he is an excellent running back too, and has that top 5 upside. I don't disagree with that at all.
The one thing I would say about Ty Montgomery is he is more valuable in a PPR league
Certainly.
than he is in a standard league, but he's drafted nearly identical across all league formats. So if you're in a full point PPR or half-point PPR league, I like Ty Montgomery even more. I think he's probably a good pick if he's in the 4th round in a PPR league.
I would just say he also had some necessary bounces in ADP and in ranking because of the drafting of a couple running backs to fill out that depth chart. But if you just watch what's on the field, he's a better running back than Jamal Williams.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and watch some film. And this is something we do a lot. And if you're watching film, you need to be watching it on NFL Game Pass. NFL Game Pass is the tool we have used forever, for the last several years, to do all of our film study review. Every throw, every single catch, if it's NFL football and it's happening on Game Pass. You can rewatch every play. You want to go make that trade after week 1 or week 2, and you go, oh, but how is this guy? You can go and search by player and say, I want to look at their plays. I want to look at their routes. You have the all-22 film. You've got the condensed games into 45 minutes. They take out every between the snaps. You could just watch an entire game super quickly. I use it virtually every single day. Our writers use it. Andy uses it. Mike uses it. Look, NFL Game Pass is awesome. You got to get it for this season. So if it's NFL football and it happened, NFL Game Pass has got it. Best of all, you can kick off the 2017 NFL season with a free NFL Game Pass trial. Sign up now at NFL.com/fantasyfootballers. That's NFL.com/fantasyfootballers.
Very smooth transition there, and we do want to thank NFL Game Pass for supporting this podcast. We also want to thank Casper. You've heard me talk about Casper before. They are the absolute best obsessively engineered mattresses. My wife and I, we bought a Casper a couple of years back. It's still great. It's still the best value in mattresses. And, look, the best night's sleep. They give you a 100-night risk-free trial in your home. So if you don't love it, they'll pick it up. They'll refund it for you. They'll take it away if you don't want it. But I'm going to tell you, you're going to love it. Casper understands the importance of truly sleeping on a mattress before you commit, so they give you that deal. They do free shipping and returns to U.S. and Canada, and they have over 20,000 reviews with an average of 4.8. So we're not the only couple sleeping on a Casper mattress that absolutely loves it. Right now, you can get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting Casper.com/footballers and using the offer code footballers. Again, if you want to try it out and get $50 towards any mattress purchase, just go to www.casper.com/footballers and use the offer code footballers. Terms and conditions do apply, but I'm going to tell you it's a great night's sleep. And, yeah, we love the Casper mattress. All right.
Okay, so here's the thing. Somewhat breaking news. Le'Veon Bell has officially reported to camp today.
These days when we throw out breaking news, that's
why somewhat breaking news. We expected him to be back on September 1st, and he is. But there is a player who was drafted this year who had the comps to Le'Veon Bell more than any player. Every year you got the AP references. That's common. Whoever's a big bruising back, you go, is he the next Adrian Peterson? But I don't hear a lot of Lev Bell comparisons because he's such a unique, patient runner, such a great pass catcher. But there is a rookie this year, and one of the analysts, Jake Ciely, who will be part of the DFS pass this year, at the All-In Kid on Twitter, loves him. Here's his take.
Hey, fantasy footballers. It's Jake Ciely, the All-In Kid, here for your fantasy MVP this season. And as you guys know, I always want value for my fantasy MVP. It's very easy to say David Johnson or Le'Veon Bell. That's not an MVP. MVP is getting 10 times the return of what you paid. And I'm seeing a running back going in the 4th round right now who is the most talented rookie running back in this draft class, who doesn't have a foot concern, who actually has concerns with other players on his team, but one of those other players being Jeremy Hill said he would even start this guy. Has received ton of praise from the coaches and Andy Dalton himself, and that is one Mr. Joe Mixon, by far the most talented running back of all rookies. He will take over sooner than later. Week 6, Week 4, Week 3, it might come very soon this season, but at one point or another, he will take over, similar to Jordan Howard last year, and be an RB1 as soon as he does and for the rest of the season. Draft him, enjoy the ride, just be a little bit patient because the guy is going to be a fantasy league changer and MVP for you this season.
Look, I don't want to just blindly agree with every take, and I won't. I'm going to argue probably some of these. But I told Mike this. I mean, Joe Mixon, I really believe by week 3, he may end up taking over that job. I've gone full circle on him. You don't like hearing about other running backs that are going to get play, but look, I believe that much like Jordan Howard, the cream rises to the top.
Well, Jordan Howard was an injury situation, though. I mean, it was Jeremy Langford got hurt, and Jordan Howard took the job, and Langford was not able to take it back.
Well, he took the job from Kareem Carey. He took the job from the other backfield mates because he was better than them.
Fair, absolutely. But I'm just saying that the guy who came in as the starter got hurt, and that's my hesitance with Joe Mixon is only, for fantasy purposes, is only related to how will Marvin Lewis handle this situation, because you are paying up for Joe Mixon like he's going to start week 1, and he, by all accounts that I have that I've heard, he will not be the starting running back in week 1. It will be Jeremy Hill. Now, and Marvin Lewis has shown over the course of his career that he will let a veteran continue to be the starter even if he's not performing nearly as well as the rookie. What I don't disagree with is if Mixon can take that job, he's a stud. He's a running back 1. I drafted Joe Mixon in my money league based on the fact that I believe he will be, and I believe certainly next year he's going to be likely a late first-round pick. So I grabbed him in this keeper league. But when will that be? That's the question. When will he take over?
The payoff is just so great.
The payoff is humongous, but if he doesn't – what if he doesn't take over till week 7 or week 8? I mean, that's holding the guy on your bench who's getting maybe 7 to 10 touches a week.
I don't know if you have to hold him on your bench. He may be playable anyways.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Sure,
is the fact that he might not be this super supreme uber value in those first 7 weeks, but he is. I mean, we saw from preseason, drive 1. It's him and Jeremy Hill taking turns. And if him and Jeremy Hill are basically going back and forth and taking turns, he will have enough snaps to be relevant, and he will score.
Well, but Gio is also there, and Gio's going to get snaps.
My point is not so much that my point is that Mixon is so talented that if Mixon gets 10 touches a game, you're going to see something like Tevin Coleman, where it's like, this isn't a guy I love. I'm not going to rank him as my 10th running back, but at the end of the week, he might be the 10th running back.
All right, we're going to turn over this next MVP pick to Pat Mayo at the PME. We love Pat. He was on last year's episode.
Got a new gig. He's over at DraftKings now.
Absolutely. So what does Pat have in store for a fantasy MVP this year?
What up, Pat Mayo here, and if we're talking fantasy MVPs, it's not always about the guy that you take in the first round that's carrying your team. Everyone gets a first-round pick, and if you're doing a snake, only certain people get to draft Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson and Antonio Brown. So the guy that you can take, you can have in any draft because he's available, and this is more so for PPR formats, but it's Bilal Powell. Listen, Bilal Powell is not a young man, and the Jets are going nowhere this season. It already looks like Matt Forte is not going to be on the field all that much. So what do we know about Bilal Powell? Well, the Jets tend to run him out when they're losing, which I do expect them to do a lot of the season. And with the way that he is used out of the backfield as a pass catcher, because frankly, let's be perfectly honest here, the Jets QB situation, no matter who it is not going to be good. That receiving core outside of Robbie Anderson, also not elite. So Bilal Powell is going to pile up all these dinky catches. He might not have the yardage that you would want for a standard league, but in PPR, he is probably the only receiving running back who's going to be able to challenge Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson in terms of target count and, more importantly, receptions. And this is a guy that you can have in the 4th or 5th round that you can play. Let's say you go 0 RB. If he was your running back 1 and he starts averaging 5.5, 6 catches a game, yeah, he's going to be fine. Bilal Powell is your fantasy MVP.
Who is it again?
Blow.
Look, it's hard to take a player on a team that you know is going to struggle to that degree, but the PPR value seems to be there. There were rumors about Matt Forte not making the roster or being shopped. They seem to be, quote, as Matt Forte calls them, fake news. But Bilal Powell does have upside. He does represent a running back, which we know how valuable those are later in drafts, that showed when he has the backfield to himself that he can be a fantasy force.
Oh, yeah, he's a monster.
Bilal Powell, to me, if he were given the opportunity, he would do exactly what Justin Forsett did for fantasy owners a couple years back, where he took over, had that one season as a top 12 running back that you didn't have to draft high. If Matt Forte leaves, I mean that's golden. We've been big fans of Bilal Powell since before he was even given an opportunity. When we had Nick Mangold on the show, and he was talking about, we were wanting to know all about Forte, and he's like, dude, Bilal Powell's just been amazing in camp this preseason. He has looked good, but if he was my RB1, sorry, Pat, I am not going to be happy.
He's talking about 0 RB in a PPR, so that's a very specific.
Yeah, I guess if you're in a certain type of league where you're 3 wide receivers, full PPR, only need 2 running backs, that could be. But I did think Pat Mayo was very kind when he said he expects the Jets to lose, quote, a lot of the season. Because
I thought he was very kind when he said their wide receiver core wasn't elite.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those were kind words. Pat, and the New York Jets fans.
Sweet nothings into the ears of New York Jets fans.
for only saying a lot of the season.
Oh, and I doubt I'm going to hear from any New York Jets fans in opposition to these statements because they know the truth.
They know. They're hoping, right? I mean, if I was a Jets fan,
I would
be so pissed off if we won a game.
All right.
Right?
You'd be
I would.
At this point, because
they're projected for a 3-13 year on ESPN.
Bet the under.
They're trusting the process.
Yeah.
They are.
No, I know.
So if you get a win, you're going to go, oh, come on.
It's called the Brady weight. The Bills have taken this approach as well. Eventually he'll be old enough to leave.
Yeah. All right. Let's
turn it over to Brandon.
Let's go to a good team here. And Brandon Marianne Lee, great friend of the show. We had fun with her in Toronto. She is fantastic. You can follow her at Twitter at Brandon her FFB. She last year had a great fantasy MVP pick that helped a lot of people. So let's hear who she's got this year.
I'm Brandon Marianne Lee from Fantasy Alarm and co-founder of Her Fantasy Football, and I am here to repeat myself. That's right. DeVante Freeman is going to be your fantasy MVP. I said this last year, and I am sticking to it. I know he suffered a concussion. He's okay. He's come back. Luckily, he had a lot of time off, which is great. There's some really interesting things about DeVante Freeman that you may or may not know. He is the only running back with over 1,000 rushing yards in both the 2015 and 2016 season. That's right, just DeVante Freeman. He also was incredibly productive on a per-touch basis, averaging 4.75 yards per carry and 8.56 yards per catch while scoring 13 total touchdowns. He did all of this while Tevin Coleman was nipping at his ankles. And I know Kyle Shanahan left town, but I think we've exaggerated how much we think that this offense is going to fall off a cliff. They look pretty darn good to me. And if anyone benefits from Kyle Shanahan's departure, it's Freeman, because Coleman was a Shanahan guy. That's why they kept putting him in there. Shanahan loved him. Well, now they're just going to say, oh, we signed this guy to a huge deal. He's our future. Let's ride it out. All right, I'm all in. I'm all in with DeVante Freeman, MVP.
Love it.
Yeah, and here's the deal for me with DeVante Freeman. I answered a Foot Clan question the other day, and they were saying, let's say you're in the first round, who's the one pick you would hate to see go right in front of you? And I mean, and that's a tough question because the first round is filled with so many quality guys. But I said, if I'm in the back of the first and DeVante Freeman gets picked right before me, that's going to suck because I feel very strongly that he is kind of the last running back of the second tier of my second tiers, and I'm talking of Shady, Murray, and Freeman. Because then it starts another tier for me. So if Freeman goes, like, that's really upsetting. I think he's going to be fantastic this year.
What do you think of her take on the Shanahan, him leaving, and the Tevin Coleman favoritism that she's putting on, basically Coleman's snaps?
I don't necessarily think that Tevin Coleman will get used any less than he was last year. That being said, I do think if someone benefits from the departure, it would be Freeman because he is their main first down back, and they might end up running the ball a little bit more this year. I did actually question. I was like, So Devonta Freeman got this huge contract. There's no way they're going to be able to sign, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to be able to sign Tevin Coleman.
They won't.
So Tevin Coleman will leave in free agency, and there's a team out there that could really use him that did not like the running backs this year that also has Kyle Shanahan. So maybe dynasty Tevin Coleman to the Niners' future in store.
That's pretty funny.
To
All
pair
right.
up with Kirk Cousins.
Let's go ahead and turn it over to John Paulsen from 4 for 4. He was on last year's MVP episode as well. Let's see who he likes in 2017.
Hi, guys. John Paulsen from 4for4.com here, and my fantasy MVP this season is a player that I'm targeting in the 6th round of every PPR draft that I can get him. That's Pierre Garcon of the 49ers. He is going off the board, 34th, 35th receiver in PPR drafts, and I think he's going to finish in the top 25, maybe in the top 20 or the top 15. He's being reunited with Kyle Shanahan, his former coach from Washington. The last year they were together in 2013. Garcon caught 113 passes for 1,346 yards and 5 touchdowns. He doesn't have much competition for targets, and the 49ers are likely to be in negative game script much of the year, forcing them to throw the ball a bit more than they want to. So I think given all that, he's a great pick in the 6th round.
First of all, love and respect John Paulsen in the industry. Second of all, in case you didn't know, that is excited John Paulsen. He's excited
Certainly.
for Pierre
Certainly
Garcon,
is.
and I am as well. What do you guys think?
Well, I know you're excited. I mean, you literally made trades
I did.
on your team so that you could make sure that Pierre Garcon was starting. So you've put kind of your money where your mouth is on Pierre Garcon. He's one of the better values in drafts, and if you want to take running backs early to make sure that you've got them, and then you're worried about your weakness later in drafts at wide receiver, Paulsen brings up every relevant point. And one of the things that Paulsen is really great at doing is just looking at the stats and where they have to lie, and just kind of extrapolating things out and going, okay, the targets have to be here at X amount, and they have to go to Pierre Garcon at X percentage. And at the end of the day, Pierre Garcon is going to be a really valuable fantasy football player. I agree 100%. I'd be happy to have him on any of my rosters, whether it's PPR or standard. But if you do get any kind of point per reception, half point or full, I think he's a great pick.
It sounded like you were about to go full high school algebra on everyone in there with all your player X's. And I went back and I watched the game after Andy had talked about it when we were breaking down preseason week 3, and Andy is correct. Pierre Garcon will be the slant man this year. And the fact that they have Marquise Goodwin on the outside who runs like a 3.5.
He's a cheetah.
I mean, he's the fastest man I've ever seen.
He looks really fast.
He's really fast. That slant is going to be open because you have to respect what Goodwin can do on the outside. Shanahan has done himself an excellent job, him and Lynch, building this team up. They had nothing coming into this offseason, and the fact that they were wise enough to pair Garcon, Hoyer, and Goodwin, there's going to be fantasy points there for Garcon.
You can't like Hoyer and not like Garcon, and I know we all respect Hoyer's fantasy prowess. But if you're comparing Garcon to a guy like Macklin, give me Garcon all day long. I just love the opportunity as the number one in Shanahan's offense with Hoyer. And right now, the gap is pretty large for me between Macklin and Garcon. So
I will
any
say
other
this.
thoughts, Jay?
Yeah, the only other thoughts I have on the Garcon situation, Brian Hoyer is one of those quarterbacks that has never yet finished a complete season. I don't expect him to with that offensive line and the way he plays football. So when or if he were to go, out and the next man up has to come in store, Pierre Garcon takes a big hit. So I like drafting Pierre Garcon, but if he gets off to a hot start, 4 weeks into the season, I'm happy to trade him for value because I don't think Brian Hoyer plays 16.
All right, let's go ahead and kick it over to Matt Harmon. Matt Harmon's work was featured, well, he's from NFL.com, but his work was also featured in our Ultimate Draft Kit, Reception Perception. Let's see who Harmon loves for 2017.
Hey, everybody. Matt Harmon from NFL.com and the creator of Reception Perception, official partner of the Fantasy Footballers Ultimate Draft Kit for the 2017 season. I'm here today to give you my fantasy football MVP of this year. And I know everybody is expecting me to drop some wide receiver here, especially after I smashed it with Bruce Ellington last year, obviously. However, I'm actually going to give you a quarterback here that I'm really excited about and finding myself drafting more and more as the season gets near. And that's Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson. Not only is Wilson due for some progression in his career rate statistics that hit lows last year in 72 rushes for just over 250 yards, but also his touchdown rate, which was just just under 4% last year. His career average actually sits over just at 5.6%. He's actually cleared 6.3 three times over the last 5 years. Those are going to rise this year. And not to mention, look at the weapons around Russell Wilson. He's playing with a resurgent Jimmy Graham that's just primed to get back to his New Orleans form, looking dialed in the preseason. The best slot receiver in the NFL in Doug Baldwin, and 2 speedy young receivers who are just primed to break out this year in Paul Richardson and Tyler Lockett. Everything is set up for Wilson, and I believe this is the year where you can get him at a discount, but he is still going to give you that QB1 overall upside at an unfair weekly advantage. He's my MVP pick for this 2017 season. Go get him.
All right, what do you think, Mike?
Well, number one, shout out to Matt Harmon. Matt Harmon is a leader, right? He is always setting trends. If you follow him on Twitter, you get his food takes, which are usually bad, but he sets trends. And I noticed he went there for all these English majors out there. He went with progression instead of positive regression. That was my first takeaway of his
Good job,
spiel.
Matt.
But I can't disagree with Russell Wilson. Everything for Wilson, for me to be an MVP, though, has to do with his draft price. How does your league handle quarterbacks? But if you can get him in that 7-8 range, and he has the ability to be a top 5 quarterback, well, I like going late round quarterback. Not all those guys have the ability to be a top 5 guy like Wilson.
All right, you can follow Matt Harmon at @MattHarmon_BYB on Twitter. Let's kick it over to Ben Cummins. You can follow him at Ben Cummins FF. He is one of the co-hosts with Mike on the Fantasy Footballers DFS podcast, and I want to know, who's his fantasy MVP?
What up, Foot Clan? Ben Cummins here. We're talking 2017 Fantasy Football MVP, and I'm not going obvious because that's not fun. I want to talk about a value and a guy that doesn't need an injury to blow his ADP out of the water. I'm talking Randall Cobb. In 2014, 91 catches, 1,287 yards, 12 touchdowns, PPR wide receiver 8 finish not that long ago. 2012, 80 catches, 954 yards, 8 touchdowns. Yeah, he's had some bad seasons in there, but those can be explained by injuries and Aaron Rodgers having his worst fantasy season of his career in 2015. Throw out Cobb's rookie year where he wasn't a full-time player. In the 3 years he's played in at least 15 games, his lowest PPR finish is wide receiver 25. You know where you can get him now? Wide receiver 39 at pick 8.06. He was going as wide receiver 19 at pick 3.08 just last year. Take the discount on this guy all day. Embrace that recency bias. The injury risks are baked into his ADP, but you can buy him at his floor, and he possesses tons of upside thanks to that boy Aaron Rodgers. He's healthy now, and he's got a double-digit touchdown season coming this year. Book it.
All right, Jason, nobody knows more about baking than you do. So speak about Randall Cobb. What's your take here on Ben Cummins?
I mean, look, Randall Cobb has not only the ability to be a wide receiver 1, he's been a wide receiver 1. He has the best quarterback in the game, and if the touchdowns were to swing from 14 to Jordy and double digits to Devonta Adams, which they probably will, they'll swing towards Randall Cobb. I think his value where he's going, I've been drafting him in a lot of best ball leagues lately because you don't have to predict the games that he'll get the touchdowns. He has those monstrous, 3 touchdown game upside games. He's had that in the past. I like Randall Cobb this year. Early in the offseason, I pegged him as one of those guys that I thought was just being drafted later than he should be.
He's been left for dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is recency bias. Ben's right about that. Let's kick it over to Chris Meaney. You can follow Chris at Chris Meaney on Twitter. He is another one of the co-hosts with Mike on the Fantasy Footballers DFS podcast. You might know him from the Daily Dose segments we did last year and the year before. Chris, it's time for him to reveal his fantasy MVP.
My 2017 Fantasy Football MVP is Miami Dolphins wide receiver DeVante Parker. After a slow start to his NFL career due to a foot injury, Parker is now healthy and primed for a big-time season in year 3 in the NFL. The 6'3" wideout has all the tools to be successful, tremendous hands and speed, and can turn short catches into big plays as he has a 15.1 yards per catch average over his first 2 years. Ryan Tannehill's favorite target was Jarvis Landry, but with Tanny gone and Jay Cutler in, that favorite target in the passing game will no doubt be Parker. Landry could even be traded this season. In Cutler's first game, he targeted Parker in 3 of his 6 throws. And in the second preseason game, The duo connected twice for 74 yards, including a 72-yard play. Cutler's a gunslinger. We know that. He's been known to lock into a wide receiver, and he's not afraid to throw that 50-50 ball. Parker has the ability to go up and get that ball, and he'll be a red zone target. Plus, Cutler's already commented on how Parker is a faster Alshon Jeffrey. Parker's average draft position has jumped 3 rounds since the Cutler signing, but it's warranted. Fantasy Pros has him as the 34th wide receiver taken off the board and the 14th overall pick in the NFL draft just 3 seasons ago, is the 97th pick on average according to Yahoo Sports. Target him as your wide receiver 3 and watch him turn into a wide receiver.
That was it. That was it. That's when he actually hung up the phone at the local Walmart over the address announcer.
I like to imagine that Chris Meaney was giving his take, and then halfway through he thought, I got to take this up a notch. So he pulled out a megaphone and then just started to shout into his phone.
Well done, Meaney.
So
I wanted to know where the exits on the plane were. That's what I was waiting to find out.
Audio quality aside, I love this. DeVante Parker was actually was in consideration for me to be my fantasy MVP because if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I've been gushing about DeVante Parker since Jay Cutler has come to town and since Jay Cutler has been heavily targeting him, and then we got to see the splash play. I mean, it's all coming together for a mid-round pick who could make that jump to being an every week starter, a 2, even low-end wide receiver 1 upside.
All right, yeah. I mean, Parker is one of those players that his ADP was so low that no matter how well he performs in the preseason, it's rare to have it move up to the point where maybe the value really is. So he still represents a value. It's time for our fantasy MVP picks.
All right.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Who else?
I feel like there should be.
Sorry.
I feel like there should be like a musical intro for this. But hi, I'm Jason Moore from the Fantasy Footballers. Follow me on at Jason FFL on Twitter. My fantasy MVP this year is the newest hotness that has been created.
You're all in.
I am all in on the rookie Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt has the best overall combination of everything that's coming together out of a bunch of good rookie running backs. He was very successful and productive in college. The team traded up to get him in the draft, and Andy Reid is great for running backs. Not good for running backs. He's great for running backs. He made Spencer Ware a really great fantasy asset for a while, and last year if Spencer Ware had scored as he basically should have given his usage and his opportunities, we'd be Spencer Ware would have been a first-round pick this year. The other thing that's great about Andy Reid is that he uses every single starting running back is used in the passing game in tremendous ways. He's never – when Sharkhandrick West got the role, he was used. Spencer Ware was used. Jamal Charles. Shady has always been a great pass catcher used in that role under Andy Reid. And you've got a guy in Kareem Hunt that does catch the ball. He was great in college with his receiving production. So all the way around, you have the volume, you've got the talent, you have opportunity, you've got bad competition in the backfield with Charkandrick West and C.J. Spiller. You've got a great head coach. You've got college production. You've got draft capital. You've got preseason film that looked really good. And you have the best average draft position right now in the draft for any workhorse who's a starting running back outside of maybe Ty Montgomery if you believe he's going to be a workhorse, and Frank Gore, of course. You got to give the shout-out to Frank Gore. So he's right now at the 3-4 turn. Do you know what that means when you're being drafted at the 3-4 turn? That means you're going to the guy who had the number 1 or number 2 pick. So you're pairing David Johnson or Le'Veon Bell with Kareem Hunt. And you're getting a great, wide receiver in the meantime. I love it.
He's even a running back. A great running back.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Oh, you're
that
saying
you
with the second pick. Gotcha. Nope, that makes sense.
Receiver.
All right, Kareem Hunt is Jason's fantasy MVP. I'm going to go with Gronk.
Wow,
Rob
Never
Gronkowski. Look, he's going at the end of the second round, and my contention is this. Everybody who drafts him in the third round is primed to win your fantasy league. He's unguardable. Edelman's targets disappear. Not that you need another reason to love Rob Gronkowski. He's healthy right now. And
near is a
near.
He's
He's nearly healthy. Look, during his 5 healthy games last year, he averaged 17 fantasy points a game, right? That's 6 better than Kelsey.
6 more points per game?
Yeah, than Kelsey.
Wow.
But get this. That's more per game than Mike Evans, Jordy Nelson, or Antonio Brown. You're outscoring your opponents at the tight end position by 7 to 10 points a game on average. That's the gap between Rodgers and Bortles. That's the gap, get this, from Jordan Howard to Chris Thompson last year. That's an unfair advantage. That's a fantasy MVP. So I think if you can get him in the third, even late second, look, I'm banking on the health this year. He's been healthy. He's played in the preseason for the first time in a long time. And who else is there?
And his contract is incentivized to play games and to be healthy.
So I love Gronkowski. He's my fantasy MVP pick this year.
I love it because this is the first year I've ever been able to fully endorse people drafting Gronk. I can't take a tight end with my first pick.
Sure.
I can't take a tight end with my early second pick on the turn. But the back of the second, the early third for Gronk, absolutely. So I love that pick. Mine, I'm going with an extreme value pick. I'm going Ted Ginn Jr. Everyone, the value in your draft is insane. And we got a glimpse of preseason week 3. We saw what Drew Brees is going to do with Ted Ginn, and that was the only one targeted less or targeted more than Ted Ginn, Michael Thomas, the team's number 1 wide receiver. Ted Ginn is the speed on this team. Michael Thomas is a 4.57 guy. Willie Snead is a 4.62 guy. They lost Cooks. They lost their speed, and they said, hey, let's go get it with a veteran and Ted Ginn Jr. If he can get 10 touchdowns with Cam Newton, what is the floor here for Ted Ginn Jr., who you're drafting in the double-digit area? An end around. He had a 40-plus yard end around to start the game. Sean Payton is going to plan some special things for Ted Ginn Jr., and I have grabbed him now lately. Since I've seen that, man, how they are going to use him, I'm grabbing him everywhere. I'm reaching 2 rounds because who cares? Who cares?
So what?
So what?
You grab him in the 8th or the 9th round. Maybe that's not his ADP. You're not getting full value. Who cares? I think that he's going to turn into a possibly a wide receiver 2 starter every single week. And if not, he's a flex play who can go off and win you a week at any given moment. I'm all in on Ted Ginn Jr. this year.
I really like it. He's somebody I'm targeting at the end of drafts along with a player like Adam Thielen. Mike, I love the pick. Thanks to everybody who contributed fantasy
MVP
thank you so picks.
Much.
We'll be tweeting those out. We'll post them on the website as well, and we'll see what happens. Look, the NFL season is right around the corner. Super excited to get started. Right now, you know what we're doing? This segment's going to be on every single week, and there is something on the line, so let's get to it.
The Daily Dose, brought to you by PlayDraft.
All right, the Daily Dose, once a week. We are drafting head-to-head on PlayDraft against each other.
Mono v mono.
And look, this is so easy to do with your friends and with leagues that we have done it on the show. Like while we're doing the Fantasy MVP, we set up this league, and we just entered it, and it starts in 30 seconds here. If you haven't played PlayDraft, we're going to be going head-to-head against each other, all 3 of us, every week. The loser, the basement, that person is going to get their lunch chosen by the other 2, and I can tell you from experience,
here comes the eggplant.
That is not a good thing, and we'll videotape that and show it to you. But look,
I'm going to be
starting
on the clock
right now
here in 5 seconds. This is a very easy call for me. We're starting at the top. When the Steelers go on the road, they run the ball, and I am going Mr. Le'Veon Bell back at practice today as the 101.
So you're taking Lev 101.
Andy, you're
I'm
on the
jumping
clock.
right in and taking David Johnson against Detroit in week 1. So if you don't know how this works, you draft 2 wide receivers or tight ends, 2 running backs, and 1 quarterback. So you play 5 players against each other. Mike is at the turn.
I'm at the turn, and I went wide receiver. I took Julio Jones against Chicago, and then I took Mike Evans, who's going to take on the Dolphins. I love the fact that – and if you're not familiar with draft, you go 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, and then there's 2 flex positions, which can be wide receiver or tight end. And I've filled up my wide receiver slots, and I'm very pleased.
I went with LaShawn McCoy to pair with David Johnson. McCoy takes on the Jets in week 1. The workload and production should be available to him, so I'm going to pair those 2 running backs, and Jason's at the turn now.
I love this. So my first pick is definitely going to be A.J. Green. He is the number 1 on my board for week 1 against the Ravens. I think he's got a better matchup than most of the other guys. You've got Jordy, but he's playing against Seattle. For my second pick, I'm gonna zig here, and I'm gonna go with a quarterback I don't want to lose out on, which is Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson. I think they're going to be in a shootout with Green Bay, and I think Russell Wilson's going to be able to put up a lot of fantasy points.
Really happy with my third pick here. It's an easy one. I'm taking Antonio Brown against Cleveland to pair with David Johnson and LaShawn McCoy. Mike, you got a couple picks here. And, look, I only need 2 more picks, and this draft is done.
So I'm taking an Andy Holloway special here because he gets to play the Colts in Week 1. Todd Gurley is not my favorite player for the season.
I have him down on my list.
But I love him for Week 1. And then I'm going to round that out with Jason's MVP because he's playing on Thursday. And he's going to be great on top of that. That's Kareem Hunt. He gets to open the season against the Patriots.
I'm going to pair Antonio Brown with Doug Baldwin in Week 1. Love the matchup against Green Bay. Russell Wilson just went off the board to Jason. And I'm going to mitigate some of that upside that Jason has by drafting his wide receiver.
Yeah, I was totally going to go Doug Baldwin. Baldwin there as well. I wanted to get Devonta Freeman. And good news, I got Devonta Freeman. Part of me here now is looking at possibly going with a tight end who's got the touchdown upside. I was thinking maybe Jimmy Graham to pair, but I'm actually going to go with Greg Olsen, reach a little bit deeper.
I like that pick.
But he's got a great matchup against San Francisco.
All right, lay of the land here. My running backs, LaShawn McCoy, David Johnson, wide receivers, Antonio Brown, and Doug Baldwin. It's my final pick, and I'm going to take Matt Ryan going against the Chicago Bears to finish out my Week 1 roster.
Oof. I got the trouble here is you got the Goats are going up against good defenses. Rodgers plays Seattle. Brady plays Kansas City. I'm going to zig here. We've seen how bad Oakland's defense has been this preseason. I'm going to take the number 2 overall draft pick, Marcus Mariota.
Wow. I thought you might go Big Ben against Cleveland.
I thought about it, but then Jason's right. They're going to run the crap out of the ball.
So Jason's team, look, a lot on the line this week. I do not want to eat eggplant, nor will I, because my team's going to obviously win. Jason, Russell Wilson, Lev Bell, Devonta Freeman, A.J. Green, and Greg Olsen. I've got Matt Ryan, David Johnson, LaShawn McCoy, Antonio Brown, and Doug Baldwin. And Mike went with Mariota, Gurley, Hunt, Jones, and Evans. I think Mike has the most matchup-centric team, but it'll be very interesting. That's the beauty of this game on PlayDraft. So you can check it out. If you want a free entry, you can go to playdraft.com/ballers.
I cannot wait to watch you fellas eat.
Wait, both losers?
No, I was going to say there'll be either one or two.
I'm inferring that I'm winning every single week is what I'm
You're
really
just saying
about.
Through the whole year,
yes,
you're feeding us terrible food.
Get ready for dog food.
Is there
wait a minute.
Get ready for dog food. Wait, there is rules here. You have to order it on a menu.
We're going to have two. We're going to actually have 2 lineups before Week 1 of the NFL. So there could be one person eating twice.
Eating twice. Junk.
Yeah, eating garbage.
Hey, Footland, remember, every throw, every catch, every 4th and inches, the NFL has you covered with the NFL Game Pass. Like I said, that's where we go to watch all of our film, get those condensed games. It's absolutely incredible. If it's NFL football and it happened, NFL Game Pass has got it. So kick off the 2017 NFL season with a free NFL Game Pass trial. Sign up now at NFL.com/fantasy footballers.
All right, well, that is it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed the Fantasy MVP, the Daily Dose, all the news and information. And we'll be back.
Very nice flair.
We'll be back on Monday. We got a great episode for Monday. I believe Monday is good vibes, bad vibes.
As of right now, it is.
And then Tuesday, we've got a live show, and that is bold predictions for the upcoming season. That's always a fun episode. So keep it right here. Subscribe, listen, check out jointhefoot.com if you want an extra episode every single week. And if it's, if you're drafting this weekend, don't forget about the Ultimate Draft Kit. Still available on the website, ultimatedraftkit.com. Take care.
We got it under control. Hey, thank you so much, Footland. We'll see you on Monday. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.